Welcome back to It's Your Environment. This is an environmental show, and we have a real environmentalist with us. His name is Dan Rudebeck, and I don't have any control over this man. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks, and even if he has to embarrass me to do it. Tell us a little bit about what's happening to our wonderful watershed here with Winnebago, Poygan, Winneconne, the Wolf and Fox Rivers.
Well, we're looking at the end stage of something that started in the 1850s when they dammed the river at Neenah and Menasha and raised the water levels in the lake. Before that time, the upriver lakes, Poygan, Winneconne, and Butamore, were just wide spots in the river with huge floodplains. And those floodplains were all wetland. And when you raise the water as much as they did it, altogether a total of about 3 feet, you kill all the wetland plants because they're not built for, nature took 10,000 years to build this up, and I always say, and the Corps of Engineers destroyed it in about 100 years, most of it. And so now, when I came on the scene, Winnebago was in the process of the wetlands around the lake were in the process of being reclaimed. And that meant they filled them in with garbage and industrial waste, and then they capped them with clay, and then they built stuff on top of them. And they never, in those days, that was in the 50s, they never paid any attention to what was going to happen to the lakes. As a result, Winnebago became severely degraded, the water quality. And as a adjunct to that, as the water destroyed the marshes and wetlands in the lakes upstream, then those lakes began to have water quality problems as well. So by the time I got on the scene at Poygan, probably 7,000 acres maybe had been lost just on Lake Poygan of wetlands. Well, the water quality wasn't the best. There were still a few places to hunt ducks that were very productive, but just in the 30 years or so since then, most of those are gone, and the ducks still, the old timers say, well, the ducks change their flyway. No, they don't. They didn't change their flyway, but they fly over and they look down and they don't see any habitat for them. They don't see any feed, so they keep right on going through down to Lake Winnebago, where they can eat all kinds of zebra mussels. So that started me becoming more active. And in the 90s, late 90s, I took the presidency of the Sportsmen's Club. And I told them, well, we need to do a little bit more than just maintain roads on the ice for safe travel and sponsor ice fishing events. So there were some people that were listening to me and that wanted to help. And so we did a couple of projects, big projects. Both of them, unfortunately, failed, but they got us on the map. One of the things we did, the Winnebago Comprehensive Management Plan called for the replanting of wild celery in Lake Poygan, and over a course of about 3 years, we harvested and planted over 27,000 wild celery tubers in Norwegian Bay on Lake Poygan. Unfortunately, they just started sprouting. The Corps of Engineers would raise the water and they'd all die off because the water was too dirty for the sunlight to reach the leaves of the plant as it was growing, and so they starved to death. The other thing we did was we started putting out what are called hen houses. They're a mallard nesting structure that sits up on a pole. It's a tube stuffed with hay, and the hen can get in there. She can be off the ground and safe from predators and lay a clutch and hatch her eggs, and we were trying to raise ducks. Well, unfortunately, the mallards are by nature an upland nester, and there were enough uplands around the lake within walking distance for a duck that they just chose to nest in the wetlands. We raised a lot of songbirds, though. Anyway, in the process, I was rubbing elbows with DNR people and with politicians, and I was also learning, especially from the DNR biologists at ground level, what was really happening to those lakes. And it all came down to the water level control. And so that started me on a battle with various stakeholder groups and the Corps of Engineers that continues to this day. But as things have gotten worse, and as climate change has reared its head, even the Corps has begun to realize that what they were doing ain't working. And the shoreline property owners, not last year, but the year before, if you think back and if you can look in the newspapers in that time, you'll see that people were complaining very loudly about the water quality, because all of the lakes, including Lake Poygan, where I've never seen that, were algae ridden. I mean, they were literally, the algae just exploded. And the reason the algae exploded was because there was nutrient runoff into the lake, both from the Wolf River and from the Fox Rivers, running into the system, plus the surrounding area, the just nature of the fall of the land toward those lakes. And there was a lot of phosphorus coming in there and nothing to eat it except algae. And there were people, I was at a Corps of Engineers meeting at the end of that year, and I was amazed at the people that were there complaining and saying, you've got to change, you've got to change. Well, the Corps is changing. That's one of the battles that I've fought for a long time, and I'm starting to win it. I probably won't be alive to see the end, but it's starting to happen. The other thing that happened to me was, as my duck hunting went away, I don't know how to put it, but I got mad. And
Let's hold that thought, because we need to take our second break, okay, and we'll be back, and I want you still to be mad. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Environment. I'm George Curtis. My guest is Dan Rudebeck, and Dan's mad. What are you mad about?
Well, I was telling you before we broke here that I was mad. What got me mad was watching my duck hunt disappear, but there's a lot more to it than that. I was also watching water quality degrade. Then along came climate change. That changed everything. When climate change really got going, then the division between people who were interested in the environment and people who were interested just in how much money they could make, unfortunately, became very, very sharp. And as a result, we have progressed along a line of development here as a society that is eventually, if we continue, I've realized, is going to result in this planet no longer being suitable for human habitation on any kind of a major scale. And that's not, I'm not going to see that, you're not going to see that. A lot of the people out there aren't going to see that, but their kids will, and their grandkids most certainly will. And that's what we have to focus on now. The rest of it all fits in. What you have to understand is the environment is one continuous fabric wrapping around the earth. And you pull one thread, and that fabric is diminished. You pull enough threads, and that fabric is going to fall apart. And we've seen that happen time after time in arena after arena. What we have to do now is we have to stand up, get our heads together, and tell the leaders of the world and of the country and of the state and of the local community, stop it. It's time that we take care of this planet. It's time that we take care of this country. It's time that we take care of this place, wherever you happen to be. It's time we take care of it, because if we don't, we're going to lose it. And the way to do that, I mean, you can speak out, you can write op-eds in a newspaper, but the real power in this country lies at the ballot box. And that means vote for people who care about the environment. And don't stay home if you don't like somebody. I mean, if they're not perfect. Nobody is going to agree with everybody else at any time for more than maybe 10 seconds. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that we get the people in power with their hands on the levers of government in this country that can change our direction and save our planet and save our country and save the places that we live and that we cherish. Does that make any sense?
Well said. Well said. You're telling me, and please shoot me down if you aren't, climate change is real.
Oh.
Global warming is real. Increased water levels are real and causing problems all over the world.
Yep.
The ocean is rising, and it might get rid of Florida. Not in our lifetime, but Florida's going away. And it's affecting everybody all over. It's changing the ecology of plants, animals, fish, everything.
Correct.
And the quality of air and the quality of water determines whether future generations of human beings are going to survive.
Correct.
And we can do something about it today a lot easier than doing something about it 10 years from now.
That's exactly right.
What should we be doing right now, right here?
Well, in the first place, don't listen to the people who are saying if we just remove all the regulations, everything will be fine. No, they will not be fine. When the president was first elected, he came on television and he showed a pile of paper, which he pointed to as being the current regulatory framework that we lived under, and it was the size of a couple of phone booths. And then he pointed to a tiny pile of paper next to it, and he said, that's where we're going back to. Well, I was alive when that little pile of paper was all we had. And we had, remember the Love Canal? You're old enough to remember
I do.
The Love Canal. Some of you people out there are old enough to remember the Love Canal. Remember the brown air in San Francisco and L.A.? Remember the Cuyahoga River that used to catch fire once a month? That's what we're supposedly going back to under this current administration and under the current philosophy of the people in power and government. Now, I hate to tell you this, but that ain't going to work. You go back there, and there's going to be a lot of people, innocent people who don't understand what's happening to them, that are going to die. They're going to die from asthma. They're going to die from poisoning. They're going to die from, well, frankly, with climate change, some of them are going to die from the heat and from the severe cold, because the way climate change works is I always define climate change as a redistribution of the temperature and precipitation gradients on a global scale. And that does a lot of things. When we get those real cold spells, that's because the polar vortex up at the North Pole is weak. When it's weak, it doesn't circulate as vigorously, and that allows the coldest air on the planet, on the northern hemisphere of the planet, to leak down. When that vortex is strong, then it keeps it bottled up within the Arctic regions. And, who the hell knew that? I didn't know that until about 5 years ago. But that's those kinds of things. When scientists tell us that, don't say, oh, they're lying. They're not lying. And if you don't believe them, then you're not part of the solution. You're part of the problem.
Well said, Dan. We're out of time. I like it when you get mad. I want you to stay mad, and I want you to make the rest of us mad more often, because this is our planet, and it's our responsibility.
You bet.
And the crisis is today, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, George.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now Dan's made me mad. Again. I'm mad about 200 years of our history where we have picked profit over the protection of our environment. I am mad about the fact that we are hiding our heads in the sand about some real threats to the entire planet. I am mad about what we have done to the extinction of hundreds of species. And we're doing the same thing about the extinction of the species you and I are a member of. Let's all get mad. Let's decide the time to do something about it is today. I'm George Curtis, and that's my opinion.